Since ancient times, even before Christ was born, many thinkers have pondered the role of the government in society and proposed many ideas on what its relationship with the citizens should be. This focus on the relationship between the two became even more apparent during the Enlightenment era when thinkers such as John Locke, Adam Smith, and other classical liberal philosophers questioned the role of the state and rejected the idea that government should get involved in private life. Although this way of thinking may be mistakenly viewed as something that is unique to the Western civilizations and not as something that philosophers from other civilizations have rationally developed or could even conjecture, this view is a misguided one that people have had since the times of Aristotle. In the last lecture, we covered the political philosophy of Mencius and explained how he came to remarkably similar conclusions with the giants of classical liberal philosophers such as John Locke and Immanuel Kant. In this lecture, we will delineate the arguments that Mencius advanced to allow owning private properties, as well as the reasons to support a free market economy with minimal government intervention. We hope that this video can help correct the still widely held view that Confucian thought is not supportive of and even antithetical to private property rights, as well as the view that philosophers from other nations are not capable of thinking for themselves and always argue for tyranny and collective issues. A lot of people, and even some scholars, falsely believe that private land ownership by the citizens did not exist during Mencius' time. However, as evidence suggests, even during the times that Mencius lived in, the Warring States period from 475 BCE to 221 BCE, there was already a shift from state to private ownership of land in all of the various Chinese kingdoms. According to Norman P. Ho, an assistant professor of law at Beijing University, School of Transnational Law, there is ample historical evidence of the transfer of lands and land transactions. In the Tsinghua China Law Review, he claims that by Confucius' time, the middle of the Spring and Autumn period from 770 BCE to 475 BCE, private land ownership became increasingly common, and by Mencius' time, land could be bought and sold like any other commodity. We can conclude then that the concept of private property and people's rights associated with owning property is not a Western concept and is not something that comes from the West either. It has existed in other parts of the world and has been well defined since 5th century BCE. So we can definitively witness that this jingoistic perspective comes from not paying attention to the historical context pertaining to property developments in other countries. Thus, to avoid misinterpretation of the quoted primary sources, we will consider the historical context during the times in which the philosophers lived to have a more accurate understanding of the arguments. Mencius discusses how to best promote material prosperity and articulates many of the same points that Adam Smith would later in his writing The Wealth of Nations, 2,000 years later, on price fixing, the division of labor, and free trade. Confucianism, namely Mencius, justified private ownership of property based on a belief that more people and society as a whole will be better off because such a society will be more stable, harmonious, and orderly. He also claims that private ownership of property is critically important and essential in allowing individuals to develop the virtues such as xiao, filial piety, li, social etiquette and manner, yi, justice, and eventually yuan, benevolence or kindness. His justification is based on the modern concept of economic efficiency theory. That is, private property is key to the smooth functioning of a trade-based economy as well as ensuring productive and efficient division of labor. Mencius attests that if people do not possess their own private property, they will become morally bankrupt and will engage in criminal activities and immoral acts. If enough people start engaging in violent activities, society itself will become damaged, unstable and disorderly, may eventually lead to the collapse, resulting in everyone living in a worse off living conditions. So owning private property is justified because when people have it, they're better able to provide materially for their family from young to old. They can also enjoy their time with families and friends, engage with traditions, and learn to develop and practice the key Confucian virtues. They can serve their parents while they're alive and honor them after their death, as well as provide security for the family and the children. On the contrary, he argues without some degree of material prosperity, it would be difficult for any but a small minority to become virtuous. Accordingly, the society characterized by order and stability will be better for the people than a society that is full of disorder and crime, which would be the result if the private property did not exist. This emphasis on personal moral cultivation is important, Professor Ho comments. because it makes private property, not state or common property, all the more important, since the entire project of Confucian self-cultivation is inherently and highly personal and unique to each individual's circumstances. Moreover, private property also increases social utility by allowing people to prepare and protect against famines and natural disasters. Increased family welfare across society will lead to higher social welfare. As a consequence, the government has a responsibility to ensure that people have private properties and must not seize them. Mencius suggests, if each household with a 5-acre plot of land is planted with mulberry trees to raise silkworms, 50-year-olds can wear silk. If the care of chicken, pigs, dogs, and sows does not miss its season, 70-year-olds can eat meat. If the government does not steal the labor during the farming seasons of each 100-acre field, a clan with many mouths can go without hunger. Smith believed that, as long as supply and demand, prices and competition were left free of government regulation, the pursuit of material self-interest would maximize the wealth of a society. Mencius also proclaimed that a free market society is also a part of the essential component of a wealthy nation that fosters a healthy environment for its citizens to develop their virtues. Not only does he endorse private ownership of property, but he also emphasized a free market economy founded upon the division of labor. He understood the importance of efficient division of labor in a free society because it allows for specialization, which in turn leads to economic efficiency in which the people can produce more goods and less works overall for society. He insisted that the nature of a free market is one that rests upon the division of labor, since some people labor with their hearts and others with their strength, just like there are those that govern and those that are governed. Hence, if everyone only could use the products they make themselves, this would lead the whole world to run around to the point of exhaustion, as Mencius proclaims. Agriculturalists such as Xu Xing, however, believe that class structures unnaturally lead to oppression, and so they aim to get rid of the distinction between those who work with their hands and those who work with their minds. Instead, everyone must labor in agricultural activities, and that includes the emperor. However, Mencius rejected the proposal that everyone should make everything for themselves, and believed that this was a fundamentally flawed view of the world. He suggested that their insistence upon the class struggle and oppression did not take into account the benefits of the division of labor. Mencius asserts that to trade grain for implements is not to inflict hardship on the potter and the blacksmith. The potter and the blacksmith, for their part, also trade their wares for grain. If everyone must make everything he uses, the empire will be led along the path of incessant toil. This sentiment is also present in the work of Adam Smith, The Wealth of Nation, where he illuminates the benefits of the division of labor as it is the great multiplication of the production of all the different arts, in consequence of the division of labor, which occasions in a well-governed society that universal opulence, which extends itself to the lowest ranks of the people. Every worksman has a great quantity of his own work to dispose of beyond what he himself has occasion for, and every other worksman being exactly in the same situation, he is able to exchange a great quantity of his own goods for a great quantity, or what comes to the same thing, for the price of a great quantity of theirs. He supplies them abundantly with what they have occasion for, and they accommodate him as imply with what he has occasion for, and a general plenty diffuses itself through all the different ranks of society. Mencius further postulated that a free market system based on the division of labor was not only efficient, but also moral. This economic system founded upon private property is moral because it lets people save their energies and lead efficient, productive, and healthy lives. Therefore, he claimed that a free market system is righteous common to the world and integrates moral justifications. He advanced this presupposition by questioning, exchanging melee for tools does not harm the potter or blacksmith, and when the blacksmith exchanges tools for melee, does this hurt the farmer? Why does Xu Xing not become a potter and blacksmith and only get everything from his own household to use? Why does he exchange things in such confusion with the various artisans? Why does Xu Xing not avoid all this trouble? When counseling the government officials and the king, he advised them to neither fix prices nor raise taxes. Contrary to the agriculturalists, Mencius believed that fixing prices will not only lower the quality of goods and a dearth of skilled labor, but it will also lead to people engaging in dishonest activities and create calamities. He questions this approach as, if fine shoes are the same in price as rough ones, who will be making them? If we follow the way of Xu Xing, everyone will be drawing everyone else into committing dishonesties. How can it make the society orderly? When instructing how to build an ideal state to King Xuan of Qi, He explained that the king should keep the taxes low and impose no tariffs or levies on the imported goods in order to promote trade. In one of his dialogues, King Xuan asked if it is acceptable to reduce the heavy tax burden he has slowly raised over time. Mencius replies, "Suppose there is a person who every day appropriates one of his neighbor's chickens. Someone tells him, this is not the way of a superior person. The king then asks, may I reduce it to appropriating one chicken every month and wait until the next year to stop? Mencius then delivers one of his most famous maxims. If one knows that it is not righteous, then one should quickly stop. There is a problem, however, that both Mencius and Confucius were both aware, and that problem is an uneven distribution of wealth and the fact that not everyone may be better off in a private property ownership state. This problem stems from the fact that some people will use any means to amass property, and if the government does not regulate that through taxation, this will create class disparity where the rich keep getting richer and the poor keep getting poorer. Yet, Mencius adopted a rather naturalist response to this problem by arguing that real life is like a competition, and just like in a competition, there will always be winners and losers. The zero-sum game aspect is one of the essences of life that cannot be separated. He asseverates, it is essential to things that they are unequal. Some are worth twice or 5 times, 10 or 100 times, 1,000 or 10,000 times as much as others. In reducing them to the same, you are throwing the empire into disorder. More importantly, the failure to recognize the reality will not only disappoint us, we might even be tempted to try and change this. However, Mencius advises against this approach and suggested that any forceful changes would lead to a disaster. He warned, because things are inherently unequal, if you line them up and treat them as identical, this will bring chaos to the world. If a fine shoe and a shoddy shoe are the same prices, will anyone make the former? Despite his naturalist approach to the economy, he does not argue for total freedom where the government does not intervene in the economy. He asserts that the government also has the duty to ensure that individuals do not have limitless property rights or amass property without limit. He panned, an enlightened ruler must regulate the people's property right to ensure that it is sufficient on the one hand to serve their fathers and mothers, and on the other hand to nurture their wives and children. In good years, they're always full. In years of famine, they escape death. Only then do they rush toward the good. We must remember that not every classical liberal supports laissez-faire capitalism, similar to how some classical liberal philosophers, such as John Rawls, advocated government intervention to promote the lives of the least advantaged and members of the lowest social class by utilizing the power of the state. Mencius also endorsed government intervention to regulate the economy to a certain extent to promote the lives of presumably the lower and middle class families and prevent the means for the elites of the society to exploit the rest. Many people, including scholars, misconceive that Confucius disapproved of material wealth and by extension, economic activities that may hamper the cultivation of their virtues. Professor Ho illuminates this misconception by explaining, neither Confucius nor Mencius was against wealth. Rather, they argue that one must act ethically in the pursuit of wealth. This is supported by the Analects, records which contain a dialogue between Zigong, one of Confucius's disciples, and Confucius, in which Zigong said, poor without servility, rich without arrogance. How is that? Confucius said, not bad, but better still, poor yet cheerful, rich yet considerate. Furthermore, in spite of his endorsement for government intervention, he does not justify the state to absolutely regulate every property to a point that the regulations rather become a burden to every citizen. For Mencius, excessive regulations imposed by the government is what ultimately led the prosperous spring and autumn period to end and descend into the warring states period, where tyrannical states were born and rebellions ensued. Without the security guaranteed by one's own property, people will not have the time to improve their physical strength, or have adequate leisure time to develop their cognitive ability to attend to their personal moral development. Therefore, Fan Yueping, a Chinese professor at the City University of Hong Kong, argued that an ideal Confucian society requires not only a free market economic system, but also a privately owned economic system. Regrettably reflecting on the consequences of the totalitarian governments, Mencius lamented the poor welfare of people and their torturous existence during his time and moaned. Nowadays, the people's permanent property is regulated so much so that it is neither sufficient to serve their fathers and mothers, and on the other hand, to nurture their wives and children. In good years, they're always bitter. In years of famine, they cannot escape death. How could they have leisure for practicing proper social etiquettes and implementing justice?